Welcome to my fifth episode of Poets of All Time, and this time we have the formidable American poet who came to England and became the natural citizen and became a British poet, T.S. Eliot. So, welcome to T.S. Eliot, all of you. Thank you. T.S. Eliot actually came from Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri of New England. He entered Harvard in 1906 and was influenced there by the anti-romanticism of Irving Babbitt and the philosophical and critical interests of Judge Santayana. So that was his advantage. His biggest advantage is, he could combine the philosophy of Irving Babbitt, Judge Santayana, Heraclitus, and these philosophers were his weapons. That nobody had. So this is something unique about T.S. Eliot. His first poem was The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. This is T.S. Eliot selected poems. T.S. Eliot selected poems. I like it very much because I taught this at Khalicourt College, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. I'm going to read some of the lines because I like this poem awfully well, very much. And let us see the style of T.S. Eliot. Let us go then you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky, like a peasant etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the motoring retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells, streets that follow like tedious argument of insidious intent, lead you to the overwhelming question, oh, do not ask what is it, let us go and make a visit. In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. I taught this poem long ago in Khalicourt College to the PG students. Later I also taught in BJP College. So in the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. Michelangelo no longer existed. So what did he mean? He means a lot of things. The love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Actually, Prufrock is an American who was in search of love, and many people say Prufrock is nobody but Eliot himself. The love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. There is no love song, and there is nothing for this man called Prufrock. The yellow fog that drops its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that drops its muzzle on the window panes, lifts its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains. Let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. It goes on and on. And then he says, no, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. I am an attendant lord, one that will do to swell our progress, start a scene or two, advise the prince, no doubt an easy tool, deferential, glad to be of use, politic, cautious and meticulous, full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse, at times it almost ridiculous, almost at times the fool. I grow old, I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled, were my favourite lines. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare to eat a peach? I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I have heard the marmot singing, each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. I have seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back. When the wind blows the water white and black, we have lingered in the chambers of the sea, by seagulls wretched with the seaweed, red and brown. till human voices wake us and we drown. This was the poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. It was a beautiful song, and I liked particularly for its lyricism, and as I. Richard should call it, music of ideas. It's a wonderful poem, and very close on the heels of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock also came the most famous poem for which he got Nobel Prize for Literature, and that is The Wasteland. 1948, he got Nobel Prize for Literature, and he also got the Order of Merit by the British government. So, that was a great thing. To understand Eliot, we must understand there are three Eliots. The three Eliots. One is the poet Eliot. The poet Eliot lasted, I have written down, 1910 to 1942. The drama Eliot, 1926 to 1953. Criticism Eliot, 1920 to 45. And you must read his criticism to understand his poetry. He made it very clear, and particularly in his essay, I would love to read. In his essay on the metaphysical poets, he made it very clear. He made it very clear. As you know, I had also said in my introduction to John Donne that he was a lover of John Donne and he revived John Donne, and he was thankful to the man who had revived John Donne. And he says in this important essay, he says, poetry must be difficult. He makes it very clear. Poetry must be very clear. The poet must become more and more comprehensive, more allusive, more indirect, in order to force, to dislocate if necessary, language into its meaning. We can only say that it appears likely that poets in our civilization as it exists at present must be difficult. Our civilization comprehends great variety and complexity, and this variety and complexity, playing upon a refined sensibility, must produce various and complex results. That is T.S. Eliot. So you must understand why he was obscure. Many people say that he was obscure, he was difficult. True, it is very, very true that Eliot is obscure. Eliot is very, very difficult as a poet. But why is it difficult? He made it very clear that our civilization demands that poets should be difficult, and he was difficult. And then we must come to the drama Eliot, 1926 to 1953, and particularly his famous dramas are Murder in the Cathedral, The Family Reunion, Cocktail Party, The Confidential Clerk, The Elder Statesman. They contain some of the best dramatic poetry scenes, the Elizabethans. So he was also a great dramatist. And then finally we come to his famous poem, Four Quartets. Four Quartets. And of course, before Four Quartets, I would love to read a few lines from The Wasteland, for which he got Nobel Prize for Literature. The first was Burial of the Dead. This is April, and he says April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with the spring rain. This is how he started. It was an allusion to Chaucer, as everybody knows. He called it Unreal City. London was Unreal City, America was Unreal City, and all big cities were Unreal cities. Life was getting complex. And the second section is called Game of Chess. Third section is called Fire Sermon. Fourth section is called Death by Water. And then finally we come to What the Thunder Said. This is the fifth section. And there he says, Ganga was sunken, and the limp leaves waited for rain, while the black clouds gathered for distant over Himabant. And let us make it very clear. I must make it very clear also that he was not only a student of philosophy, and he loved philosophy, and he carried philosophy to his poetry. He was also a lover of Indian philosophy, he was a lover of Indian mysticism. And that is very important to understand his poetry. He talks about Ganga, he talks about Himabant, he talks about clouds. And actually this is a reference to the Western civilization. The Western civilization has become dry, desiccated, barren, absolutely jejune. And in the situation which he talks about in the Westland, he gives the the elixir. How do we overcome the crisis? By following these four Mahamantras, Mrityunjaya Mahamantras: Datta, Dayadhvam, Damyata. Datta, Dayadhvam, Damyata. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. This is how he ended the great classical work that is called the Westland. Datta, we must give. This is what humanity must do to overcome the crisis that we are in. Datta, we must give. Dayadhvam, Dayadhvam is sympathize. Damyata, control. If we adopt these three things, Datta, Dayadhvam, Damyata, which we got from Upanishads, then we can overcome the Westland and the situation. We are all trapped there. Datta, Dayadhvam, Damyata, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We need Shanti, we need peace. And this peace is very important. Without this peace, mankind shall go through barren times and what is known as the Westland. And then finally we come to his important work, his magnum opus, Four Quartets. Four Quartets is musical. There are four important pieces, four poems in this work appeared separately: Bont Nathan, East Coker, The Dry Salvages, Little Gidding. Bont Nathan, East Coker, The Dry Salvages, Little Gidding. Bont Nathan, he talks about time, he meditates on time, and he says, only through time can be defeated. Only through time can be defeated. And he says, the way up and the way down are all the same. And he quotes from Heraclitus. Bont Nathan. East Coker is also a meditation on a place called East Coker. The Dry Salvages talks about the air raids on London. And Little Gidding, his final work, which is published in 1942. Bont Nathan in 1936, East Coker 1940, The Dry Salvages 1941, Little Gidding 1942. And this all they make. They all make four quartets. Four quartets, as he suggests, each poem is built on a musical pattern, and that is why I. Richards called it the music of ideas. His poetry is musical. His poetry is absolutely musical. But as he was a lover of John Donne, he combined, head with heart, as I told earlier, head with heart, and intellect with emotion. That's very important. And no other poet had done it. And he makes it very clear that a dissociation of sensibility had set in. And for the first time, you find a unified sensibility in T.S. Eliot. He was a great poet, and he was we were very fond of him, and we were very fond of T.S. Eliot in our times. And he dominated the entire, he and W. Yeats, between them, they dominated over English poetry for a long time. The entire 20th century dominated by both these two poets. T.S. Eliot is almost unavoidable. You have to read him. You have to read him to understand the Western civilization. And particularly we Indians are very much in love with T.S. Eliot because he loves us. He loves Indian mysticism and particularly Indian philosophy. So, in my next poetry, I will go to W. Yeats. Thank you very much.